Guys, stop, please. Okay, so I'm going to start this out by explaining it in the context of how you would see it in a movie trailer. So as it starts out is, it's Tammy Wynette's Stand By Your Man playing Sometimes It's Hard to Be a Woman, and it's this guy doing his wedding vows. It's just fixed camera shot just on him, and he's talking, and it's this really poetic speech about like deep love and all of these other things. And then it gets to right before the pickup is for the chorus, and it switches over, and he's marrying a man. So that's kind of the twist to the beginning of the trailer to pull you in. And then when the first big swell of the chorus comes up, it shows the kind of like a little bit of their beginning, just a couple shots of the beginning of the relationship. But the point being is one of them is a politician, and he's running for international politics. And it's sort of through the first swell shows them coming through together and him running for president and finally winning the campaign and becoming the first gay president. And so that kind of like settles out through the first swell of the chorus, and then when the second swell of the chorus hits, it's this other big one of like nuclear war, like international nuclear war. Everything's breaking down, everybody's gone completely crazy, the whole world is hitting apocalypse stage, the economy's tanking, the ozone has grown this ginormous hole in it, and everything is just totally screwed. The world is pretty much ending. And then when the third swell hits, that's when you start to see a little bit more of like what is happening in their personal relationship, and you kind of see that the guy who is the president is starting to go really crazy and just weird, erratic behavior, violent behavior. Maybe he hits him somewhere in there, you don't know really, maybe just some throwing of things, kind of like spice it up a little bit. But then it goes through that, and then by the time it's back to the next one, it's slowed down a little bit, and it's just showing things kind of denigrating. Which is where I kind of take over from the trailer aspect and talk a little bit more about like what's going on in the plot. So obviously you've hit these two characters who they met. That was almost the inciting incident. Maybe you could even say the inciting incident was him being elected president. And then they go through it and things just complicate because the world stage becomes so complex to the point where it's climaxing where their relationship is destroyed. He thinks he's completely crazy, only he has to stand by his man who's running the country in order to kind of preserve it, which is kind of the conflict of the character there, is that he has this job of being the first man and having to kind of rectify that with what's going on inside and by his standards and deciding where the point is, where, and of course being in love with this person who's going totally nuts at the same time. So then things just keep getting worse between the two of them. Eventually he just starts going nuts and attacking all these different countries, totally wipes out entire sections of the world. Like, when I say apocalypse, it's totally apocalypse, like the world is completely over. And then it just keeps getting worse, and then some more weird stuff kind of happens, and then there's some weird kind of like occulty things that start to happen, and that's when he starts to really get freaked out. And then he realizes, dun dun dun, my husband is the Antichrist. And that's kind of where I would cut it off at the end of the trailer, is the vision I have for it is he's sitting there in like Ray-Bans, and he's like, you know what your problem is? You scare too easy. And he pulls off the Ray-Bans and his eyes are just blood red, like not bloodshot, like entire eye is blood red. And that would be the cutoff for it. And then the big swell out of stand by your, and then cut that scene, and then just the cutoff with it, and then man held out over the end of the credits. So it's a big story, lots of things happen in it, but it kind of ties in a lot of things that I think are interesting about stories, where you can kind of play off of like, what's the future going to be like, and people's fears about nuclear war, but also is very political in a sense, because you kind of get to know also what would happen when we do have a gay president, and how it could go horribly wrong, because he could be the Antichrist. So that's it.